I want to welcome you all. This workshop involves the identification of an economic opportunity or a problem, the first step in the economic entrepreneurial journey. So let's go through the agenda for today, showing you what to expect. We'll have an introduction, and we'll review a little bit of last week's module for those who've just come this week. And we'll welcome our guest speakers. Nafy Flatley, founder of Teranga, an interesting beverage company here in the Bay Area. Hyunjoo Albrecht, founder of Sinto Gourmet, an interesting product from Korea that has come to the U.S. market very nicely, integrating with Western food as well as Asian food. We'll have a few opportunity for a Q&A, and after hearing from our inspiring speakers, we'll then get into the ideation workshop component, addressing how one comes up with an idea for a project, how one attempts to solve a problem or capture a need. So basically, entrepreneurship is about identifying a need in the market or addressing a problem. Identifying it, there's lots of problems out there, a lot of business problems. Some having to do with maybe computers or electronics. Those are problems. Those are not quite the same as needs. When one can solve a need in the market, one has an explosive opportunity for developing some entrepreneurial projects. So we'll cover that in a moment. So I'm just going to introduce myself and how I started this journey. Once again, I started off, I was a kid from LA, was very interested in figuring out ways to sustain myself when growing up. So I had been involved in a lot of business projects, working in various capacities. Some of you have done that when you were growing up. But then when I went to college, I was really not very interested in business. I was interested in science. I wanted to learn about the world around me, this kind of beautiful world of nature and so forth, and that's where I went. And I worked there, but lo and behold, after working in this kind of my dream job, a research institution, I was pushed into management, which was the last place I thought I wanted to go. But actually, I felt that in the end, it was a great place because I was able to mobilize people and get ideas out there, because science in a vacuum is no good. Business in a vacuum is no good. The whole idea, one has to get the idea out. So I'm very grateful to have had that experience of being a facilitator in business. I worked I worked in a lighting business. I leveraged this experience at the laboratory and worked in a lighting company introducing energy efficient lighting. And then I continued working in management and worked in corporate governance. So business and life in general is just a bunch of paths. And without knowing where you go, you don't know where you're going until you look back and can connect the dots. And I think looking back, I can see that there's a logical progression of events. Of course, now the end result is I'm teaching. I had this opportunity to share what I've learned along the way and what I continue to learn from you as students, from you as entrepreneurs, because this is a circular kind of journey. We're all on it together and we all derive inspiration from one another. And strangely enough, it's just a tap on the shoulder that makes a difference. One word, one sentence can really make the difference in your journey. So this is where I'm going to go next, is this idea of social competencies. But before we do that, I want to remind you why we're on this journey here at the university. Because we know that this whole route of work hard, graduate school, and corporate ladder is a bogus type of plan for most people. It just doesn't plain work anymore. It worked for some in the past, but it certainly doesn't work now. Those corporate jobs are being reduced, and really it's up to us to come up with ideas for creating businesses. Creating businesses within businesses or creating our own business. So this whole idea of the gig economy is really what we're faced with, of coming up with practical and reasonable solutions that have value to society. So here's the old maze. How do you figure it out? And the answer is diligently and slowly and with intention. Every step, it's a step-by-step process, but each step you take will reveal where you go on your next journey. But you have to take the step. You have to get out there and try. And those of you who have come here, validate this. You're out there listening. There may be one thing that you hear today that can make a difference. And that one thing is worth your while. So endorse yourself for taking a step. And then the next step, you don't know where it will lead you. So once again, I've mentioned we are all entrepreneurs. How we manifest this knowledge remains to be seen. We all know that survival is key. We need to feed ourselves, we need to clothe ourselves, we need to find shelter. So this innate desire to create and to be enterprising lays within us. Sometimes it gets beaten down by this assumption that we have to follow a particular prescribed path, but really we are all basically extremely creative and we just have to unleash that. So what I suggested last time is we have to very much develop our social competencies. This is not hard science. This is not something you're going to read in a textbook. But if we don't develop these social competencies, we're not going to be able to manifest our destiny. Because people can give us tools, they can give us theories, they can give us ideas of how to do things. But unless we're ready to do these, unless we as people are solidly ready to do these things, they're not going to happen. You cannot make things happen unless you really revise your social competency all the time. Discipline. Discipline is kind of, sounds like a pejorative word, like, you know, you have to practice discipline. I have this crazy thing about my way, and that if I always am on time. I will never be late for anything. And if I commit to something, I will always do it. I will never back out and say I have a cold or I have some other competing problem that will disavow me from making my commitment. So these are things that you have to practice on a day-to-day basis. And strangely, these really empower you, and then you start to think, yeah, I can do this. I can do this because I've got the discipline. I am not afraid. And of course, risk-taking, one thinks about entrepreneurs as extraordinary risk takers, but really it's not gambling. You just have to, every day you get up and you try something new is the kind of risk I'm talking about. Risk about learning stuff, and that brings us on to number 12, is continuously learning. I just spoke with Philip, an entrepreneur who we talk about this. He's listening to podcasts all the time. We're getting inspiration from all sources. We're constantly uncovering tool. At our university, University of San Francisco, we have a new technology called Magic Leap. Has anyone heard of Magic Leap? Anyone see the movie Clock in the Wall? It's about magic. Anyway, Magic Leap has to do with augmented reality. There's all these great tools out there that you have the opportunity of now applying. They've never really been applied before, but you have that opportunity. So if you can think of a business connection to use these tools, then you have an interesting challenge. Okay, so the question that you really have to ask as an entrepreneur, and this is probably something that you know, is what inspires you, what excites you, what frustrates you, what makes you happy. If you don't know these answers, you got to start answering these questions, because this is down to the social competency. If you don't know who you are, you don't know where you're going. You cannot be this kind of ephemeral person that just kind of glides through, because then you won't be able to make decisions and look for opportunities. So we'll explore this. So just keep these questions in mind, because I'm going to ask these of you. So I'd like to know if you've addressed these. What are your hobbies? How can you go, if you know, there's that expression, if you work in something that you love, you will never work a day in your life. So now that you're this inventor, this creator, are you going to create something that you don't like, that you don't love? No. You're going to choose something that really resonates with you. Do you have a passion for social justice? And do you have a passion for social issues? Are you going to work in a corporate environment when you have this burning desire to make a difference? No. You don't want to work and spend your precious life doing something that you don't love and then you don't believe in. So that's why these questions are so critical. The clearer you are about your answers, the clearer your pathway is. So I'm going to just put these out there now, and we'll get back to that a little bit later. So the whole bit about entrepreneurship that we're going to address is ideation. You need to be a social anthropologist. You need to observe how people are doing things and how you are doing it, and ask if they can be done in a different way. A different way, not just with more buttons or more gadgets, a different way. Before the car, there's a famous story, before the car came around, someone asked, what would you like to see as a better form of transportation? And the person said, a faster horse. They didn't imagine a car. They didn't imagine a spaceship. These are creative ideas that came out of people who are thinking a little differently. When the BlackBerry was around and there were buttons on the phone, did anyone ever have a BlackBerry here? The question was, hey, what can we do to make this BlackBerry more interesting? And the response was, before Steve Jobs, put more buttons, more functions, better buttons. It was only when Jobs came in and he was observing how people use the phone, they like to touch the phone. They just don't like to, they didn't like the stylus to touch the screen. They wanted to touch the phone. And so he decided, hey, why not have a swiping screen? So it's a way of thinking that you have to do for yourself. And we all have to do for ourselves. We have to start thinking really creatively about how people are doing things and how they could be done differently. Not the same thing with just a few more function keys or a faster horse, but differently. All right, so how do you identify an opportunity? How do you be a change maker? You can look at the market, as we said, or you can look at social problems. There are plenty of social problems out here that are unmet. So if that's your passion, go for it. Because that doesn't have to be your final destination. Your passion is what you feel at the moment. There's pivots in life. I described all my pivots in my life. You may go on your course and go in one direction, and it's not as though you're giving up where you're going, you're just making a slight pivot. So think of your journey as a series of pivots, and then once you reach a certain point in time, you can look back and see how all those pivots led you to where you are. It's really, really amazing. All right, so one of the ways entrepreneurs really start to identify a product or service is they travel. This is a pathway. They travel to another country and they see a product or service in that country that's not currently being done in the home country that we're at. So I was with the women's basketball team last summer. We traveled to Italy. And there in Italy, we saw an interesting bar called the Ice House. Anyone ever hear of ice houses? It's a bar completely made out of ice. We don't have it in this country, but someone on the team from Texas said, hey, let's bring it into Texas. That's a common way that entrepreneurs get ideas. That's why traveling is such a really great source of inspiration. It forces you to be a social entrepreneur, a social anthropologists because everything is so new. Here in our own home country, we don't see things as clearly as if someone from another country would come in and observe the same things. That's one way to do it. Another way is to identify products from one's own country. From if you are an immigrant and you're coming here to the U.S., which is a home of immigrants, all of us are sons and daughters of immigrants at one time, you bring a product or service here to the U.S. You, as an immigrant, have the opportunity to know what would work here. If someone was from another country looking in, they wouldn't have that same personal experience. So you, if you have both feet in different countries, you can see what possibly will work. And that's the speakers we have today. Our first speaker we have from Senegal, and she is bringing a wonderful product that she will describe. Nafy, she's a founder of Teranga, a beverage company whose mission is to create refreshing and healthy drinks, handcrafted in small batches. I've had them myself, delicious. Wholesome goodness in every bottle is one of her marketing lines, and I find, interestingly enough, Teranga in Wolof means hospitality. What a nice word for a beverage company. So now it's my pleasure to meet the founder, CEO from Teranga, Nafy Flatley. Thank you. Nice to see you. Look. So, I was told just put it close. Yeah.
I lost my voice. Oh. So I use the baobab fruit because I have sickle cell trait as a kid, which is a blood disorder that your blood cells are not circle. They are like a shape of a crescent. So it's very hard for a sickle cell person to actually take supplements and take like vitamins from supplements. You have to take them from natural foods. So that's when the idea came to my mom, and she asked around doctors saying that my daughters have sickle cell, and I really don't like seeing them the way they feel after taking medication. And because those medications are drugs and they have stabilizers, they have all kinds of stuff. So the doctor said, why don't you look at natural products and look into baobab, look into moringa. And so she started making juices at home and making other dishes using moringa. And so from there, I had that in my background, coming to the United States, migrating here. I went to school here. I studied. I studied marketing at USF, and after I finished, I started working in the Silicon Valley as a marketing manager. And so when I finished, when I started doing that, unfortunately, when I got married, I had my son who was born preemie. And so I find myself that my American dream had to stop, and I had to focus on taking care of my son. And so the company I was working for didn't want me to work part-time. It was either full-time work or no job at all. So I picked no job at all and take care of my son. And so it's very hard to live in San Francisco with one income. And so I said, I need to find a second income. So I started brainstorming, and then I asked my mom, what is the best way for me to continue living my American dream? Because for me, when I left Senegal, I watched a lot of soap operas, and one of my favorite one was 90210, Beverly Hills. I saw that so many times, and showing kids, 14 years old, having a car, you know, having their own apartments. I'm like, oh my God, this is great. You know, I'm older than them, and I don't have that yet. So I need to go to America and live the American dream. So when I saw that that dream was being crushed, I studied. I pay a lot of money for school. Because my son is preemie and needs help, I have to stop that dream. Which I said, this is not, you know, the way I saw my life. So my mom said, there are so many ways you can live the American dream. You don't have to work for somebody. You can work for yourself. At the time, I was like, what is she talking about? Work for myself, what do I do? And what will that be? She said, you remember we used to make juices at home and sell them in the market. Why don't you do the same thing here? And I was like, wow, okay. So I started thinking about how do I start a business? How do I really just get all that together? So the first thing I looked at online was you have to have a business plan. I looked at all the different templates. They looked just too plain and too standard. And so I said, I'm going to look for a company that could help me do that. And I remember before I graduated, I heard of a company that would help women start their businesses. And so I took my son, we got in the car. I started driving inside San Francisco looking for that organization. So I went to different places and I asked, they said they don't know what I'm talking about. They said, well, the best place for you to go is at the woman's building. If you go there, maybe they'll know what you're talking about. So I went there and I asked, I said, I'm looking for a company that helps women start their businesses. They said, maybe it's Meta. Meta is another organization that also help Latino families in the mission. So I said, I'll go. I'm trying to start a business. So when I went there, I spoke to the receptionist. He said, I don't know what company you're talking about. I never heard of that. Only woman? I said, yes, only woman. And immigrant too. He said, well, we're starting a business class next week. Would you like to register? I said, sure. So I registered the class. 2 weeks into the class, I'm like, I need to ask people. Someone must know this. I'm not crazy. This is real. So I asked the teacher and I said, there is an organization that helps women start their business. Do you know of that company? He said, oh, La Cocina. I'm like, oh my God, I am not crazy. Someone knows what I'm talking about. This is real. So he said, yeah, La Cocina helps women immigrant to start their businesses, and they are here on Folsom in the mission. Let's go. We went online. We looked at the curriculum and how you can join their program. And one of them was to be a part of their orientation, and they'll give you an application from there. So I went to the application, to the orientation. I filled out the application and came back to my teacher and said, you need to help me. I have no clue how to start the business plan. I have a product. The recipe is somewhat final, but can I get help from you? So in the class, we did a focus group. Everybody tried the juices, so I made 3 different recipes. The way we drink it in Africa, in Senegal, which is where I'm from, the way that I think California would want it, and the way that I think that maybe different people that don't like so much, they need alternative, different things, how they like it. So we did a focus group. It was a mixed, like out of 50 people, it was almost 50-50. I couldn't even figure out which one was the best. So we did a couple more focus group to finalize what it was, because I want to have a final recipe to give to La Cocina when I'm going to do my presentation. So after a couple focus group, I had to ask friends and family to come to my house and ask them to try. And then I said, you know what, since I'm not able to find the final recipe after 4 different focus groups, I'm just gonna go with what I feel is the best way to move forward. Because sometimes when you're starting a business, you ask too many people, it's so divided. You just have to go with your gut feeling. You have to say, this is what I believe in. This is how I want things to go. That's how it's gonna be much easier for you to find the different routes, the different ways to do it. So I ended up picking the 3rd one, and which was that no added sugar, and also making it less concentrated compared to what we have in Senegal. And a lot of people tried and say, oh my God, this is so sour, this is so tangy, oh no, I'm not into this at all. And I'm like, oh God, okay, fine. So I went to the 2nd recipe. I still had to go back and went to the recipe. People say, I'll buy, how much? And I start selling. People start buying it from the 3rd recipe that I believe in myself. The 2nd one was the one I was selling the most. And now, I started the company, I launched the company in 2016. 2018, that third recipe is the one I sell the most, because I relaunched it again, because I said, must be something in there. I know in my gut feeling that that third recipe is the best, because people are more health conscious, and believe it or not, our palates are changing like there is no tomorrow. What we used to like 5 years ago, that's not what we like right now. And I've noticed that throughout the different recipes that I've made. So the unsweetened flavor is just the natural, raw, plain product. That's the one that I'm selling the most right now. And then the other ones, I'm still selling them. I still offer it to people. But again, that's the one. So don't give up on your one that you believe in. Even if you see that the market is going towards the one that maybe you think is your second choice, still keep the other ideas you have, because things change and rotate all the time when it comes to marketing. And so here, this is my son, by the way, my 2-year-old son. This was an article that was written by the San Francisco Chronicle, and they wanted to know why I wanted to bring Teranga in the United States. Teranga is a Senegalese word which means hospitality, friendship. It's like the way of life. The Senegalese people live their life on a regular basis. I don't know if anybody here know the word pura vida. It's the same thing. It's just the way you treat someone when you see them, the way you welcome them to your home. So this journalist from San Francisco Chronicle just wanted to know what's behind that word and how they can relate that to juice. In Senegal, when you go to someone's home, here we offer you wine, we offer you beer. In Senegal, we'll offer you the juices. So that's like a way that we welcome you to the home a lot of the times. And so
there's just a wonderful, I love this one. Which one is this?
This one is the love potion. And the reason why it's called love potion is because that's the first juice I gave my husband when we met, when we were dating. So he said that's the juice that hooked him up. And so this one it's red hibiscus, baobab as a base, which is the base for all the juices I have. Hibiscus and then mint in it. There's no stabilizers, nothing. It's just the pure juice that you get. And baobab is a superfood. It grows, the trees live up to 6,000 years old. The oldest one right now lives in Kenya, and he's 6,000 years old. And so it's a superfood that has nutrients, it has vitamins, and so drinking it, it kept me awake during my finals at school, when I was going to school for sure. I used to make it for my classmates a lot when we were at school. It doesn't have caffeine, by the way. It's no caffeine. It's just full and packed of nutrients. And what was the other slides? Okay, yeah. So I can just keep. And then I have different flavors. The other flavor that I have is the happiness blend, because it has tamarind. And the reason why I call it happiness blend, all the name of the juices have a meaning. The happiness blend is because tamarind has very good nutrients that helps facilitate the blood flow going in and out your blood. So I thought that since it makes your heart better, function better, why not call it the happiness blend? The other one is the pura vida, because it's just plain. And I went with the word pura vida because I felt like, because I'm part of the Hispanic community and I speak Spanish as my second language, and the meaning of pura vida is the same thing as Teranga. Why not pick that name to give it a name? So when you creating a company, naming certain product or your company is a very important thing. You need to think about it, because you want something kind of easy, people can remember and can relate to as well. The last flavor I have is the Teranga Strong. That one, the reason why it has the word strong is because my son, the first time he tried it, he said, "Mommy, oh my God, this is so strong." It's because it has ginger in it, and the ginger is super, 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 super intense. So you have to be a ginger lover. So he said, "Why don't you call it the strong ginger juice?" I'm like, that doesn't make sense. How about if we say Teranga Strong? So he's very proud that there is a juice that he named from from the company. So yeah, but questions I can answer. You guys have any questions that I?
Thank you so much for this.
It's okay.
As someone who teaches business, Nafy, do you think you learned any business along the way?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I learned a lot of different things. I mean, just going to USF, graduating from there, and then learning how to start a business, which is not something that's really easy. It's just following what you feel in here. That's what I always say, that if you think this is going to work, no matter what other people say, if you believe in it, just go for it. Anybody can create a business, but you need to make sure when you try to create a business, like Dr. Shatter was saying earlier, you have to make sure that you are satisfying a hole in the market. So the reason why I created Teranga and using the fruit baobab, there's nobody. I'm the first person in the whole entire world that makes juices using the baobab fruit as a base.
Sorry,
but now
does everyone know what the baobab plant, what the tree, the baobab tree? Does anyone remember the tree in
the Lion King?
Lion King, where he takes the nut, opens the fruit,
Yep.
and he baptizes the
Yeah.
baby lion. And also, there's another reference to the baobab tree in Le Petit
Prince, yeah.
sitting under the baobab tree.
Yep.
And then here, all of a sudden, from these two sources, from France and from Africa, we
Yep.
have Nafy coming here with this beautiful juice. It's absolutely delicious, caffeine-free, and you have spices in there. It's
Yes,
it's
yeah,
a
yeah.
wonderful flavor.
Yeah.
There's a question out there.
Yeah.
How hard was this to actually bring the baobab fruit to the United States?
The first time I brought the baobab, I brought it in powder version. And I remember I do it via air. So I do air and boat. So I import it from Senegal. So at the airport, the officer said, she's bringing white powder to the States. And I'm like, it's baobab fruit. She said, but it's white powder. Do you know what that is? I'm an immigrant. Yes. Are you from here? I said, no. He said, do you know what white powder is referred to? I said, no. And I said, all I know that this is a fruit that I make, so I had samples of my juices. He said, go online and Google white powder. But I said, I don't know what that means. I asked my husband, and I'm like, oh my God, that's not what I'm bringing. They already did their tests. They know it was not, but they just wanted to play around with me. But yeah, I imported from, it wasn't very easy. What's hard is the shipping. Shipping costs an arm and a leg. It costs more than the product because it comes from Senegal. I import from Senegal and from South Africa as well. So just bringing it, that transportation, is what's really costly. But getting it from there, because baobab is community owned, and so you get it from local. I get it from the local villages. So it's once a year harvest, and then when it's time to harvest, what happens is the whole community, they get together. Let's say in this region, there are like 50 baobab trees. So they get all the fruits out and sell it directly to people like me. And then I pay them, and they use that money to build the roads or to do something in the villages or in the community, which is really nice. Yeah, so that's what it is. You're welcome. Yeah. Yes?
Can you walk us through your pricing strategy?
Pricing. So pricing, I get that question every single time. And it's really hard. When I first started it, I said, this is the price I had in my mind that I want to sell my juices. There are two ways that I did it when I started it. One way was to fix a price in my head, work towards that to make it happen. And the way you do it is make sure that all the products you buy are at a low price to meet that price. That's not the best way. But because I didn't have a lot of, I just had this idea, I'm like, that's how I'm going to do it. Because I said, okay, I'll buy the kilo of baobab this price. If I start buying 500 kilo, it will go down to that. But it still hasn't happened. So I had to switch my strategies. So what you do, you cost out every single thing that goes into the final bottle. If we can look at the bottle again. Mm-hmm. from the cap to the label to the bottle and all the ingredients in the juice, you have to cost all that out. And then project how many you want to sell in, let's say, the whole year. And then also you have to add, for when in your first year, you cannot really add your salary because the company is not making very much money yet. You add the labor. If they say you're having someone else do it and you're renting a location. For me, I rent La Cucina to do my production. So the rent for the location, the labor of the person that's helping me, and anything else that get into it to make the product, you cost all that out. And that's how you get actually your final price. And you also always want to add an extra 30 or 40% for miscellaneous the expenses like your cell phone, because you use your cell phone to call to buy the labels, or you use at home your internet to go online to look for, let's say, a company. So that extra 40 or 30% of markup is what covers all those other fees that you don't know what they are. And I mean, you know, but you cannot really cost them out exactly. But make sure you know what goes in here, how much it costs. That's the first thing. Yeah. Yes.
Did La Cucina help you figure out how to get like who to work with to get like your logo made and all of that?
Yes.
Like the whole brand identity?
Yes, they help you pretty much with everything from scratch. I advise you guys, if you want to start a food business, they are more towards food business and packaged food, to go and reach out to them. The logo was done by some students from SF State. So I just had to do a mood board, tell them my vision, what I want to see. And they came up with 3 different logos, and I picked one, the one I liked the most. So they help you from all the way. Yeah. I think you had a question. You had a
No, I was
receipt.
going to ask where can we buy it, but then
Oh, yeah. I am at Rainbow. I'm at Rainbow Grocery Store. I'm at Kenyan Market, Gussie's Market. Oh, okay, Berkeley Board. This is not even up to date. This one, some of the stuff is, some of them, not up to date, but Village Market also. I'm every Saturday, this Saturday, all the way to the end of the month, I'm at the Ferry Plaza, the farmers market every Saturday. Yeah, yes.
It's often said that entrepreneurship is really strongly based on relationship building.
Yeah.
And who would like to have a business relationship with Nafy? You're such a lovely person.
With my voice.
Are you going to have a business relationship with someone who's unpleasant or difficult if you have a choice of having business relationships? So
Yep.
we wish you such a very best
Thank
wishes
you,
on this
thank you,
journey.
thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes.
One more.
Yeah.
Who was the first distributor that you went to in terms of like Angelina's Cafe, Japonica, and how did you initially get them to take you on?
Okay. The first people that got me, I don't know if you can show, there's a picture. Let's see, I'll show you something before we, and then let's see, and then if you go in here, let's say we click in here, as if you are. When I first started it, this is the kind of label I had. It's just a tag hanging. And there's no way I can sell that to a supermarket. So Angelina, which is actually my neighbor, I live in the area there. So it's a good way to be friends with your neighbors if you think you're going to be starting a business, because you just never know. I go there, I drink coffee, I buy all my stuff, and then I told her I started this business, and I was wondering if you can help me just give it a try. And she said, okay, what is it? Baobab, what? So I had to explain, just like I do every day, to tell her what baobab was, and she tried it. She was, oh my God, this is amazing. You really have something good. Oh. And I'm like, oh, okay, are you gonna carry it? She said, yes. She said, let's start with one flavor. I said, no, let's just do all 3. I'll come and demo every day for you, for people to buy. So she took all 3 flavors, and I was demoing twice a week. And everybody, and she will come and she will tell people, she's from the neighbor, she's a mother, you need to support her. So that was super cute. Yeah.
And that's what the world of entrepreneurship can be about, as opposed to corporate.
Yeah.
We're all in this space together, and it's a circular world. We support each other, and it has really great results.
Yeah.
You know, it's been said that necessity is the mother of invention, but it's also a source of inspiration. And when you have a vision, you also have an opportunity to be an innovator and innovate. And once you have that inspiration and a vision, then you're on your pathway, and you're really clearly an example of that.
Yeah, thank you.
So nice to see you,
Me
and
too,
have
likewise.
you come back.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank
you
you.
very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.
So it's my pleasure now to introduce Hyunjoo Albrecht.
Hi, 안녕하세요. My name is Hyunjoo. I'm from South Korea. Moved to US back in 2003, and then first 3 years I lived in Houston. And 2006, my husband and I moved to San Francisco, and then we live here. And then I do business. I have my business here. Then I found my company back in 2010. I named it Sinto Gourmet, and we make a kimchi. And then this kimchi, I started with $8,500 in my pocket, and now our kimchi is sold at nationwide, not only in Northern California, but also all the way to East Coast, Texas, Rocky Mountain, and everywhere. Dr. Stryker told me that most of you have had some careers before, and also now, and thinking of finding a next chapter in your life, maybe finding your own business and company, and so looking for some inspiration and ideas. Because I have been in an exact same situation for so long, that I hope that I can, be some help. So I just want to tell you how I came all the way here, and then you can maybe ask me some questions. So I was born and grown up in South Korea. My last job I had before I left, I was just working for a corporation. You know that Cisco Systems in Silicon Valley. So I was working at Cisco System Korea office in sales, selling routers, switches, and fireworks. And when I was moving to US, I just thought I was so tired of working for a corporation, and I was never on that mathematics or engineering side. I was always on creative side. So I thought maybe I want to take this chance to do something new. So I moved to Texas, Houston, and I go to culinary school. I wanted to be a chef. But this culinary school, it was 2 years college. I was the oldest, so I was already like over 30 years old, and all of my classmates were like high school graduate, 18, 19, and 20. So I had this sense of urgency. I started too late. I'm too old. So I got a full-time line cook job at the country club. So 7 hours I was cooking at the school right after. I didn't have a driving license, so I took a bus in Houston, and I went to country club and cooked like full-time 8 hours. So every day for 15 hours, I was on the floor cooking. So I have a very funny episode. So when I went to culinary school, I was foodie. My goal was to learn the best French cooking technique and the best Italian food cooking technique. That's what I thought was the most fancy upscale food in the world. I wanted to learn it. And Korean food, I was not interested because it was something very common that I cook every day. I was not interested. But then working with the other 60 other chefs from all over the world, they always ask me about Korean food, how to cook Korean barbecue, and how to make a kimchi, and I was not interested, but I just tell them how to make it, but I never took it seriously. And one day this little boy comes to me. He's like 19 or right from CIA, so he was there doing the intern, and he still had like all these pimples. And Hyunjoo, could you do me a favor? There is this girl I'm working on right now. We have gone out a few times, and she's coming to my place for the first time in 2 weeks. So I'm preparing myself to impress her. So he said like, first I'm gonna make some sushi rolls using some Japanese vocabularies like nigiri, maki, saba, very eclectic, sound very eclectic. So okay, sounds good. And then I'm gonna like show. I have these mason jars at home. I'm making sauerkraut, pickle, jam, and I think I want to make a kimchi too. So after meal, I'm gonna show this display of mason jars, and then tell her, oh, this is what I do usually, this is what I do. So I said, oh, really? You think you can attract her by kimchi? And she said, why not? It's so hip and sexy. So I was like, kimchi is sexy, really? As a Korean, kimchi is just like air. We take it granted. It's everywhere. I mean, when you go, it's everywhere. We take it granted. Nobody think kimchi as sexy. But that's how he thought, and I think maybe it worked out. So that was the first impression I had, like how other people, non-Koreans, think of kimchi. And then when I moved to San Francisco, I got a line cook job at this restaurant called Aqua in downtown, but it's no longer there. It's closed down, and still I was working very hard to learn this cooking technique, French cooking technique, but still people just asked me about all this Korean food. It was even before the K-pop and K-drama were really exploding, becoming very popular, and then but I noticed something different. People living in this West Coast, very weird. I go to party, for example, right? And then they find out I'm from South Korea, and they start talking about kimchi, of course. And they, my doctor tells me I need to eat kimchi 2 ounces every day. Do you think 2 ounces is too much? I say too little. Do you think it's good? And I'm not a doctor. I say, 2 ounces. I don't know. You can eat more. I don't know. I'm not a. And then some people really say, ever since I started in kimchi, the color of my feces changed. Do you think it's good? I think it's really working. I'm not a doctor. And then over the table they talk about some bacteria's name, Lactobacillus sakai, all these good bacteria that are in kimchi. To me, it's very interesting because Koreans, because it's maybe everywhere, it's a part of our culture. We never really discuss about it, debate about it, and talk. Of course we talk about it. We know kimchi is good for you, good for your belly, good for your immune, and it boosts your immune system. But we don't really, talk like micro level. So I thought maybe this can be, something good that I can do something with this. So this is when I started thinking about Korean food or kimchi in totally different perspective. And it was around 2008, 2009. And if you remember, at the time, Bay Area, whole nation, the housing bubble popped. So many people lost jobs, and I lost my jobs too. I only got a part-time. I couldn't pay my bills. So I just got idea, maybe I should do something with the kimchi. So next day, immediately I go to Rainbow grocery store. It was 2009, only one kimchi brand in Rainbow grocery store. Right now, they have added, I think, maybe 24 different brands of kimchi and sauerkraut back then. So, well, I think it's gonna work. So I made a kimchi sample and brought it to the Rainbow grocery. They have this customer service desk. I just say like, I wanna sell my kimchi, I wanna see it's a buyer. And then she came out, and then she said she wants to take it. I found this little catering company on Folsom Street, around 9th Street, 9th by Folsom. And then I subleased the space there, a little space. So I made it myself. And twice a week I delivered, on the cart I delivered, because Rainbow grocery store was on the 13th, so it was a 4 or 5 blocks walk. So I just delivered myself. And that's how everything started. But then I was very lucky because a year after there was a fermentation food festival up in some close to Napa Valley. So I was invited and I was there. And the whole food buyer store, Fairfax store buyer saw my kimchi. And he introduced me to the Northern California Whole Food headquarters in Emeryville. So in a few days, I got a phone call in my email. I brought my samples, and then they said, well, we will carry. So I got really locked out because from Whole Food buyer, every single day, from all over the world, they receive samples and samples and samples. But luckily for me, I didn't have to do that. I just got locked out. Since then, I have been selling a lot of kimchi, and that I grew out of that small catering company space. And now, about 5-6 years ago, I found an empty warehouse down on Cesar Chavez Street, close to the Bayview. And then I signed the lease, and I hired a contractor and built a commercial kitchen. I put all my life saving in there. So I found the 2010, and then now 2018. So it has been 8 years. So that's what I'm doing now. Yeah. Any questions? Yes.
So for kimchi, you need to have a storage. For how long is your period for that you storage the kimchi?
Also, kimchi needs to be refrigerated.
Oh, refrigerated.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I have a special cooler to keep, like about 700 square foot cooler. So I keep there. Yeah. And I think the previous somebody mentioned about the pricing or costing. So what I did was that, of course, I had no clue how to do pricing. So I made the kimchi. I did a calculation on how much it's going to cost for ingredients, label, and the packaging. That's the cost of goods in the basic. And I had that in my mind. And when I went to see a Rainbow grocery store buyer, I asked her that, how much do you think it's going to be sold for? It should be sold for. What do you think is your ideal retail price? And then maybe she says $7, right? Then $7. Then in order to sell $7 at retail, how much margin do you need? And she goes, so for example, if you give me to me for like $4 or $5, then I can put the retail price $7. So when you talk with a buyer, they're not always like secretive. They work with you, and then you're willing to work with them. Or some stores, what I did was I go there first before I meet the buyer, and I see all my competition brands. I see their pricing points. And I figured, so I create my own idea how much my product, my kimchi should be sold for. For example, this is organic, so this is more expensive. Mine is not organic, so it can be more cheaper. Like somewhere, you find your own place. And then you meet the buyer and say, I think at your store, my kimchi, if my kimchi is selling for like $10, I think it can be sold very well. What do you think? And if he agrees, then, how much margin do you need? So that's how we work. So there are many different ways. That's like when you started, because you don't have a big business going on. Of course, there's more scientific, mathematic ways to do the pricing and costing, and there's a lot of other costs involved at the end. But when I first started, that's how I started. But interestingly, when you compare to your competition brands, all the pricing, that their margin is similar to mine, my margin is similar to theirs. My cost is similar to theirs, and their cost is similar to mine. And so now I have better ways to calculate the pricing. But what you also need to think about is when you first start small, that you're going to deliver yourself. And when you deliver yourself, let's say you sell to the grocery store for $7, and they put the retail price at $10, right? And as your business grows, and you're selling to like more than 20, 30 stores, then there's a distributor who is interested. You cannot deliver everywhere. It's a lot of, you have to have a truck, you have to have a driver, you have a special logistics team. So you want to have a distributor involved. But then distributor wants a margin too. So all of a sudden now you are delivering to the grocery store at $7, but the distributor wants a margin now in between. So your price has to be lower than $7. So your distributor price has to be like $5 or $4. And distributor takes it and they put their own margin and sell it to the grocery store at $7. So this is also something that you also need to consider.
I just want to add to that also that what happens also when you first starting, you don't have a buying power. So you buy 5 pounds, 2 pounds, 3 pounds product. But once you are at 30, 40 stores, you're going to buy a pallet. Like my bottles, I used to buy, my bottles, I used to buy like 2, 3 cases. And now I buy 2, 3 pallets in 2 months. And the cost goes extremely low. So the buying power that you get to what to use with what in your business helps in your costing as well.
Yeah, so when you do the pricing, like, you know, okay, so you're like, maybe a box of cabbage is like, I don't know, $30, right? Then you think, okay, $30, then you put the costing. But then, you know, if I do the costing by $30, it's too expensive. It's gonna, it's gonna be too expensive at the end. But, you know, maybe in the future, I'm gonna buy maybe 10 boxes of cabbage. That's gonna be $25 per box. So maybe I'm gonna price it based on $25 because in the future I'll be selling more. That's a big mistake. No matter what, you have to start with a $30 per cabbage. You know, you never know what's gonna happen, and you wanna have that, and then later you have that pricing based on $30 per cabbage, right? And later, as you sell more, you buy more cabbages, but then you can get the cabbages cheaper, like $20, $25 per. So you have this $5 gap. So you think then later your margin is going to be big. But you have to understand, as your business grows and you have a distributor involved, distributor makes money not only on the margin, but also they want you to put an ad on their website. They want you to come to their own food show. 10 by 10 booths, $5,000, $6,000 just to buy a booth. And they want you to do this, and they do the audit. They charge you. It's a lot of money. So you want to hold on to your initial pricing.
Yeah. Well, Nafy, I think you can follow this very well. Yeah, this is a very complicated, dynamic situation as one scales. There's some reduced volume costs, but then there's other costs that entered into it. I just wanted to reflect on the story that you were telling so that those of you out there can also connect with that whole story. There is this thought, it reminds me, your story reminds me of the situation among people, kind of two people are talking. And one said, gee, I wanted to get some inspiration for coming up with an entrepreneurial idea, just like you out here, until something happened. And the other person said, what gave you that, where did you get your entrepreneurial idea? He says, 2 words, you're fired. When you are fired from your job, you need to be entrepreneurial. When there's a setback in your situation, you have to think creatively, because if we reflect back to that earlier discussion, we all have a sense of survival, and sometimes when we have a setback with our jobs, we tend to be creative. So had you not continued, and if you had continued in the corporate world, we wouldn't have this wonderful product, kimchi. So that's very good.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
So, you know, because, you know, it's a start your own life in a new country or new place. It's not easy because you're always late. I never went to school. I went to culinary school, but I was never like properly educated here. And then, you know, my English is not that good. And then it's just too late. No, I have no friends. I have no family. So I had to start very late. So sometimes before I used to think, you know, why it was so stupid to go to culinary school, trying to become the best, really good chef and learning all this Italian cooking and French cooking. And you know, if I just started from the very beginning, just you know, making kimchi and sell it, you know, by now maybe my company much bigger, selling more kimchi. But you know, the life is working funny way, because you know, the thing, looking back, everything that I experienced, everything I had to do, everything I had to work, for somehow they merge, and they're really big help for what I'm doing right now. For example, you know, I never really, a lot of people who start, especially food manufacturing, they have ingredient, but they don't make it. They hire employees or production managers, or they find a co-packer, because maybe they have ingredient, they have idea, but they don't know how to execute. They don't know how to produce. It's too much work. But if you ever start food business, margin is very small. It's all about volume. Until you reach certain volume of sale, you will not make a profit. 4 years, I didn't bring any single penny for the first 4 years. So, because I had experience working in the commercial kitchen as a chef, I already knew how commercial kitchen works, or the sanitation matter, for example, and I already knew. So there was one employee less. So I was able to be in the production. And then because I did the sales in South Korea, that was a big help for me. And because I learned English, I learned English in Korea because I was female, basically. It was a big discrimination. I didn't want to just print copy or make a coffee for my bosses. So I just went to English school, and that's how I got the sales job.
So what we just reflecting on what you said, you have so many wonderful learning points to discuss. And so I was just thinking about entrepreneurship is a participatory game. It's something that you identified. You learned to make, you were in the kitchen making the kimchi. You didn't instruct someone to come up with an idea. You came up with the idea. And that's what's so empowering about being an entrepreneur. It's a grassroots operation. You start and then you grow and you scale if it's right. But it empowers you because you came up with the idea, you know how to do the process, you know how to do the project. So I always encourage my students, whoever they are, whatever they are, don't think you're going to go out and hire people to code for yourself. If you do that, try to learn to code. If you're coming up with an app, try to learn to code a little on your own so you can at least prototype. There's code, there's software out there where you can prototype your idea without any heavy-duty coding. Don't distance yourself too far from whatever you're doing, because then you lose sight of the vision. Very, very important. Do we have a couple more, one or two more questions for our speaker, and then we'll have to move on to our next, because we want to leave the last part of this workshop for you to ideate and you to come up with some ideas.
I graduated from the culinary program here at City College, and I think it will be really helpful for a lot of the chefs, and we have a large population of Asian students that maybe in the future you might be able to give us a presentation about your product and how to prepare Korean food using that.
Yeah, I love to. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We hope this is an opportunity for networking. I see my top student, Jared, reaching out to Nafy, and this is what we want to do in this kind of space. We want to make connections, and that's what you really want to do from here on out. Anytime you attend any kind of group meeting where someone says something that really resonates, you reach out and start building out your network. Build it out, build it out, build it out, and then you become part of a very rich circle of people that support one another. One more question? Did we see a hand? One more question, that'll finish it up. Philip?
Because your product is perishable, how do you manage quality control and consistency of your product?
Oh, yeah, FDA will make sure that it's like I never thought I never understood that why many companies have a QA employee full time. Why? I never understood. But you know, it takes more than one full time to make sure that your food is really you know, made in good quality. And then especially the perishable, there's a lot of different ways that the FDA wants to make sure that your food is safe. Temperature, and then pH test, and then also how is it transported and how is stored. All these steps that you want to keep the log on the paper every single day or every few hours. Yeah.
Hyunjoo, I wondered if you would comment on this this Korean phrase, body and soil. And
so you know that I mentioned that earlier that when I first moved to Bay Area, I thought people were very weird. Right? Why can't they not just eat kimchi and enjoy? You know. But also another thing that really I was really surprised was and it was a very like local food movement has been happening. I was pleasantly surprised because there was a philosophy of Korean food. This expression Sinto Gourmet. It's like a century-old the expression that we have been, the philosophy we have had. And still, when you go to Korea, a lot of restaurants are named after this proverb. It means Shin-to. Shin means your body. Sorry. Shin is your body, and to is kind of a terroir, soil that you are stepping on. And buri means cannot be separated. So it means it's the best when you live eating the food that grows right here, right in your neighborhood, right in your local area. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, that's a wonderful note to think about. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.